All right, it's the Security Weekly News, episode 259. I'm Doug White, and it's Friday on the week of 27 November 2022, but it's actually December. December. Today we got Orgy of the Walking Dead, or How Elon is Controlling My Brain, Schoolyard Bully, Redigo, which I keep mispronouncing, Ducklogs, Dod Alphabet Soup, Sirius XM, Pixel Tracking, TSA, Single sign-on rants, and more on the Security Weekly News.
This is Security Weekly. For security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News.
We know that many of you are looking to bolster your security posture with cloud-native app protection and XDR. So if you haven't heard of Upticks, put them on your radar. They offer both cloud and endpoint security in a single solution. Listeners can use Upticks for up to 1,000 assets for a full year for only $1. But hurry, this offer is available only through December 31st at securityweekly.com/Upticks. That's UPTYCS, Upticks. How is your business staying one step ahead of cybercriminals? Secure your email applications, network, and data with Barracuda. Protect your business and go from zero to security in no time flat. Whether your team is working in one location or many, Barracuda has solutions that are easy to buy, deploy, and use. Learn how Barracuda can protect your business against ransomware, phishing, and other cyber attacks. Visit securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda. Barracuda, your journey secured. All right, it's the Security Weekly News. I'm Doug White. Thanks for joining us. So there's an Android malware that is disguised as reading and education app. So I don't know exactly what kind of app it is, but they said it was being hidden in reading and education application. And they said it had been running since 2018. Wow, it's a long time, but actually it makes a lot of sense. This particular malware is focused on stealing Facebook account credentials from infected devices. So Zimperium, who found this or identified it, named the malware Schoolyard Bully, and apparently it had been on Google Play for a long time, but has since been removed from Google Play, but continues to spread through third-party Android app stores. Now, I hate to tell you this, and you probably aren't aware, but there's a lot of malware in school help apps. Yeah, I know you're aware. Cheat apps, wares, all that kind of stuff has always been rife with malware because kids go online and they want to download a paper. Back in the old days, you went on the back pages of Rolling Stone magazine and they were like history papers for sale. So that, Nietzsche paper that you were supposed to write, you could just buy a copy of it for $5 and it was probably really bad. Or maybe not. I never did that, so I don't know the quality. But now people go on all these different sites and they download things that'll help them with the test. So it's an easy way to get people to do it. Schoolyard Bully basically exfiltrates your Facebook account ID, your username, your device, your name, how much RAM is on the device, and the API of the device, which I don't know what they do with all that. It may be used to try to identify specifics. But basically, it opens a legitimate Facebook login page inside the app using WebView, and then it injects a JavaScript which extracts all the user inputs. Zimperium says they've detected this malware on about 300,000 victims in 71 different countries based on their telemetry. There are at least 37 different apps that are distributing this malware on third-party app stores currently, that according to Zimperium. So you might want to issue some warnings, especially to students if you're working in the ed industry, although they may well ignore it because they want to download the answers to that calc test, the AP Calc test answers, and then, of course, they get infected with this stuff. So, it's just for your information. Redigo. I kept calling it Redigo until I got it. I was like, Redigo, and I was like, oh, Redigo. And I see what you did there. But I'm a little slow this morning because I've only had like 6 shots of espresso. I'm not sure. But Redigo is a Go-based malware that is targeting Redis servers, which have not been patched for the CVE 2022-0543 vulnerability. And it plants a Trojan backdoor which basically allows remote command execution on those devices. The vulnerability is rated as critical, and it is in the Remote Dictionary Server Software, or Redis, which had been patched for this back in February of 2022. Aquasex reported today that their Redis honeypots, which are vulnerable to this 0543 problem, caught a new piece of malware that was not identified as a threat on VirusTotal. So this may be morphing into or being a new model or something like that. The attack basically starts with scans on port 6379, which is a Redis port, and it locates that exposed Redis server, and then the attacker runs a whole bunch of different commands. They're all detailed in the article to check the version of the device to see if it's vulnerable and so forth. So they basically query a legitimate port, and they do most of their transactions on that 6379 port. If they do find that it's vulnerable, they can download a DLL onto the server, which can execute arbitrary commands. It didn't say if that was like side-loaded, kind of stuff or what, but it probably is. So this leads to eventually the conversion of the server into a worker bee in a bot network, which is likely a distributed denial of service attack. But they also apparently run crypto miners on some of the assimilated systems. So, patch this if you haven't. If you're running Redis servers, please patch them now. Ducklogs is a new malware as a service, and again, I don't know how to say this. So Mace, Maas, M-A-A-S, so double A's in Dutch and things are always like long sounds, so Mace, I guess. But Mace operators, anyway, I think we all probably know what those are. But malware as a service operations provide an easy-to-use, friendly, and fun environment for the whole family looking to get into the ransomware business. I mean, tired of all that digging around, chipped nails from typing scripts, eye strain from trying to locate port 6379 in a Wireshark dump? I know I am. That's why the all-new and improved Mace from Ducklogs is the place for you. It's like a day spa for your hacksaw skills. Ducklogs has modules for information stealing, keystroke logging, can get access to clipboard data, remote access, you name it, they have it. Ducklogs is for you. Ducklogs claims on their website that they have thousands of paying customers on subscription plans to launch more than 4,000 different malware builds. So if all that's not enough, they can also provide additional services like helping distribute payloads, drop files, and have extension changers. If you need it, they have it. Cybele said that they mostly used phishing attacks for their initial compromise, and Cybele also issued a warning that you should check sensitive data that is on your clipboard to ensure that it didn't get modified after you copied and pasted, because that's a common attack to change account numbers. I've actually had several consults regarding that, where people had account numbers changed in some manner before they actually issued the transaction and ended up paying somebody they didn't intend to pay. There's also, if you're interested, there's a detailed technical report attached to that article if you really want to read up on all the different components of this and how it works and so forth. It did not say what a subscription cost, though, but hey, it sounds like any price is not enough for what an amazing service I mean, boy, they really sell it. They must have a really good marketing department. I need to get one of those for my graduate program. In a recent study of 300 U.S.-based Department of Defense contractors, only 13% of them, which is 39 of the ones that were replying, scored over 70 in the Supplier Performance Risk System, which is called SPRS. If you're not familiar with Dod Alphabet soup systems, SPRS is the primary system for assessing supplier and product risk for unclassified information. The DoD requires a score of 110 or higher to be in full compliance. Now, according to the story, critics of this approach who are not fans of this, and I'm not a true critic of it, but I don't like it very much either. Critics say that you only need 70 and that should be good enough, but only 13% of the contractors even met that low standard. The Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation, which is called the DFAR, supplement, or DFARS, has been a law since 2017 and tries to enforce these cybersecurity standards across the defense industrial base, including contractors. So that extends down from the big players all the way down to really small contractors. And, and I want to take a moment to rant about this, because I am a really small contractor in a long supply chain of purchased companies that led to a large defense contractor. And some of the requirements of this thing just can't be met by sole proprietorship. And I think what happens is the documentation, the rules, and so forth were all written with the idea of you're a multi-million-dollar operation, and yet they try to apply those same standards all the way down to somebody like me who's a sole proprietor. And I mean, I've literally been told that the stuff I need to do to be in compliance was so outrageous. I couldn't afford it. It was more than what I was actually billing to the company per year in order to be in compliance. So, and I mean, not that that's an excuse to not have cybersecurity, but I'm not providing any software services or anything like that. It's just time. I'm actually doing some very basic things that don't actually become part of the supply chain. So they don't distinguish. And so if you don't have an accounting and a legal department handy, well, it turns into a big mess. And that was what I was advised to do, was have my legal department give me guidance on this giant document I was sent. But I get it. I mean, they're trying to protect this entire tree, not those big, luscious globes of sweet, giant defense contracting money. Note, I used to write fanfic porn for defense contractors. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. I didn't really. But I kind of imagine doing it. Anyway, then there's the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, or CMMC, which is another component of this, and that's going to go into effect in May of 2023, which means that that all contractors who sell any sort of product, even their time, will now fall under all of these requirements. So when that starts, if you sell anything, or you even look at a defense contractor, or you even just think about a defense contractor, you're probably subject to this. So just say Martin Lockheed 3 times in the mirror, and Comptroller Atkins will appear and beat you senseless with a copy of COBIT. But this is a good move forward. I mean, based on this study, it sounds like they've got a lot of work ahead, and they're going to have to get nasty if they really want to clean this up, because there's tons and tons of, I mean, you don't even know, there's an infinite sea of contractors, and all of them are affecting the supply chain in some way. Well, not all of them. I'm not, but a lot of them are. All right, so this pixel tracking stuff has gone about far enough. If you don't recall, pixel tracking is where you take a single pixel and make that a web link, that you put on a page that nobody can see. And so when somebody opens a file or they go to a specific web page, this pixel gets activated. And the pixels are usually transparent, or they're the same color as the background, and they're usually just 1 pixel in size. So they're really, really hard to see. The pixel can then report in and do all kinds of information tracking for whoever put the pixel there. The type of device, the operating system, screen resolution, whatever they want to report, IP addresses, you name it, they can report to send. So it becomes a marketing tool. And it's basically a server link, so yeah. Well, anyway, the Office for Civil Rights is warning, and this is a part of the Health and Human Services Department in the U.S. government, is warning entities that they cover that they may be in violation of HIPAA rules, which is a medical privacy law in the United States, if they use Pixel Tech or third-party vendors like Facebook and Google that use Pixel Tech on their sites. Now, according to this article, HIPAA does not apply to third-party apps that consumers choose to use. So that means that HIPAA doesn't have any involvement if you want to read up on some, WebMD or something to try and convince yourself that you've got oat cell carcinoma. I mean, I had a bad lung scan once, like 20 years ago, and you know how that goes. You go down the WebMD rabbit hole of pretty much convincing yourself that you have the most heinous diseases. But so if you're choosing it, that's one thing. But it does apply to tools that your healthcare provider actually recommends or requires their patients to use. So a lot of these healthcare providers in the last 20 years have started adding websites, patient portals, and all this kind of stuff. So the alert from the Department of Health and Human Services comes on the heels of the 6.5 million patient record breach at WakeMed Health and other breaches like Advocate Aurora Health, Community Health Network, and Novant Health, which were all tied to providers deciding to use a pixel tracking tool on their websites, apps, and patient portals. So the report said that it's likely the providers were unaware the pixel tools they were using were sharing all this data with the tech-related source because they didn't write these tools. They just got them from somebody. And so when they did that, it was a problem. So you've been warned. There is a lot more detail in this article if you're a healthcare provider or you've been using pixel tracking on your sites. There's a good side of this. It's like cookies. There's a good side of it and there's a bad side of it. And really, pixel tracking is just another kind of cookie, in my humble opinion. Well, the TSA, that's the Transportation Authority Security Administration in the United States. That's those people who wand you at the airport. They're apparently testing facial recognition tech for passenger screening at 16 major domestic airports and hope to expand it across the United States next year. The kiosks with cameras are basically doing the same thing that humans have been doing, which is taking your ID, looking at your face, and deciding if that's actually you. So, or maybe possibly you. Currently, this is entirely done by humans. The program at TSA is called CAT2, or Credential Authentication Technology with Camera Program. Boy, they love those names, huh? That one almost sounds like they work towards the acronym rather than making, according to TSA, you will not have to or be required to participate in the facial recognition program yet. And you can still go see the human scanner currently. But, honestly, I've been a member of Clear literally almost since it started. I got my original Clear credentials from their office in Manhattan when they didn't even know how to run the machine. I've had that so long because I thought it was such a great idea. And no, Clear is not a sponsor, and no, I'm not advocating them or anything like that unless they want me to pay me to do so. But I've had Clear for a long, long time. And, they've used scanners for your retinas, your fingerprints, biometric data, whatever, to validate you. And that's been, in a lot of airports for a long time. TSA says their process is more efficient and effective than the current human process that they have. They put a lot of this in place after September 11. And so they're saying that this is a better system. But there were, in the article, if you want to read it, there were numerous critiques of it from STOP, which is a privacy advocacy organization. The critics of the system said, quote, "I don't trust the TSA to evaluate the efficacy of its own facial recognition systems," which that actually sounds probably pretty realistic. And facial rec systems, as we all know, have been notorious for misidentifying people, and in particular, being against people of color. But then, so have humans for a long, long time. So I don't know, it's all racist somewhere. But the airports where this is currently being used, and it is an option. I don't want you to get worried about it. It is an option currently, not a requirement. So you can still elect to go through the queue with the human handlers, but I guess they're just putting this in place. I don't know if it's that much like Clear or not, but Clear has been there for a while. Currently, they're in Atlanta, Boston, Baltimore, National Airport in D.C., Denver, Dallas, Detroit, Gulfport, Biloxi. All righty then. Jackson, Evers, I guess some smaller airports they were testing. Las Vegas, LAX, Orlando, Miami, Phoenix, San Jose, and Salt Lake City. But they're expanding to roll all this out next year. Researchers discovered that some brand of automobiles were vulnerable to remote attacks due to a vulnerability in the Sirius XM connected vehicle service. Sirius XM is a popular satellite radio company, if you're unaware, that claims it is used by more than 12 million vehicles just in North America. The researcher named Sam Curry said that in a recent project, which a research project, not a hacking project, which targeted Sirius XM, they initially tested Nissan Connect mobile app and found a vulnerability which would allow a remote attacker to obtain the vehicle owner's name, phone number, address, car details, and so forth if they knew the VIN number. And the VIN number is that long number they print and stick right there in the inside of the windshield of cars in the U.S. and maybe around the world. I never even looked. But, anybody can walk up and see that, just standing on the street. The same vulnerability then could be used to execute commands on the vehicle, like locate the vehicle, unlock the vehicle, start the vehicle, flash the headlights, flash the horn, all that kind of stuff. SiriusXM immediately patched the vulnerability when they were informed of it and said that they had no evidence of any compromise or mods made to date regarding this vulnerability. This first one was on Honda, Nissan, and Infiniti, and Acura. And, of course, Infiniti is a Nissan brand and Acura is a Honda brand. That's just their luxury line. But Curry went on and reported another vulnerability that was allowing control of Hyundai and Genesis vehicles. Anytime you put stuff online, it's subject to vulnerabilities. So, be careful out there. Well, my threat of the week is going to be convenience. Ooh, really scary, kids. what is SCTV, Alex? But anyway, everyone may have said, some of those things about that. Like, I don't even know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I was talking about single sign-on and convenience. Now, security people probably don't feel that convenience is worth it, because as a security person, I want to require 256 character passwords that contain no repeating symbols with case variations and must be changed hourly. And no, I'm not being sarcastic. I mean, if we're going to keep using these damn things, these passwords, well, they probably should be secure. Okay, make that 512 characters, and it probably should be changed on a rotating basis every 15 minutes. Can you remodulate the shields, Mr. Tuvok? And why aren't you doing that constantly? But I mean, maybe it should be 1028 characters, from non-standard character sets like kanji or something. Oh, wait, what, Cisco? You can't handle an exclamation point. Yeah, those sites, right? Uh-oh. Well, the migration from the last few years has been towards convenience rather than security, which has been the case pretty much all along. And despite all the marketing news, there hasn't really been a movement towards the end of passwords. I mean, we hear about it a lot, or password Götterdämmerung, as we call it. But I mean, can you imagine if they banned passwords, if they just said, okay, passwords are terrible, we're not going to allow, the DoD says no more passwords, that's it. I mean, I wonder how many products could quickly come up with a solution for that, since a lot of, you'll see a lot of places where you still can't put an exclamation point, a question mark, a symbol. They're still using 4-number pins. I mean, all that stuff, all those apps written in COBOL running on an AS400, that cannot exceed 8 characters, and they have to be that kind of stuff. Yeah, for me, passwords are probably here to stay for a while. I mean, even if we want to get rid of them badly, it's one thing to say let's all use Microsoft Hello. It's another thing to say that we can actually do that. I mean, I can't get Hello to work consistently from hour to hour, let alone to turn everything over to it. So this article I got, and I got this notice in email last night as well, or 2 nights ago in email, was from LastPass, which I do use, and it basically said that LastPass, which is a password vaulting tool, was breached by an unknown threat actor, and that they had managed to access customer data that originated from a third-party cloud storage service that they use. Yikes. Now, the incident was in August of 2022, so they didn't let me know about it until, maybe they didn't know about it either until just like literally this week. But they said they'd hired Mandiant to investigate the incident, and, your immediate reaction is like, oh, right in the passwords. But according to LastPass, they did not lose any passwords, since they are, quote, safely encrypted due to LastPass's zero-knowledge architecture. Now, I immediately, of course, wanted to look this up. So apparently this zero-knowledge architecture, and I do want to qualify this. I'm not bashing LastPass. I mean, everybody gets hit with all this stuff, but I'm mostly talking about when you put all your eggs in one basket. But apparently this zero-knowledge architecture consists of your private master password, which they say they don't know, but they must know it somehow. Encryption at the device level using 256-bit AES encryption and so forth. Now, what all this means to me ultimately is it's still a password. I mean, if your master password is Mr. Happy Pants, it probably can be cracked with brute force, right? Of course, they put that on you, not on them. So they if that's your problem, which I agree. I mean, they can't force you to do that. Now, they have a really complicated looking flow chart on their website that looks really marketing-y, and it shows how all this works. But the very first line says MFA-optional. So, and then a master password created by you. So you don't use MFA. Your password is Mr. Happy Pants, and so basically, or if you give your master password to Mr. Flappy when they call you asking for help stopping hackers, and that's the number one vector. They just call you up and go, hey, I'm Mr. Flappy. Could you give me your and you go, oh wow, Mr. Flappy, let me give you my master password. Well, that's it for you then. And understand, I'm not slamming LastPass. This works as well as anything I've found. And you should be doing something like this so that you have all these different passwords and you do change them regularly. But it's still scary because you're really putting all your eggs in this one, proverbial password basket. And I mean, there's a reason for that idiom, right? You put everything together in one place and it gets compromised in one place, and bada bing, bada boom. I get the convenience of the password vault, and I do like it, but it still scares me at the same time. Kind of like a roller coaster. You want to do it, but it's kind of scary at the same time. And the fact that some marketing person had to draw up all these fancy explanation for how secure it is always makes the old government cynicism kick right in there. As William Burroughs said somewhere, God save us all from a difficult decision from the Pentagon. I think it was William Burroughs that said that. Maybe I'm wrong. It could have been somebody else, but I think it was him. I can hear his voice saying that. I mean, the flowchart looks slick and confusing enough to make, an attacker think twice. Yeah, right. But it looks slick and confusing enough to make people buy and go, wow, this must be good. It looks complicated. And that old optional MFA, well, that might work if you use it, but then I get a news story about, hey, buddy, listen. You know how sometimes when we trust a vendor called Sid's Prawn Sandwiches and it turns out we all got salmonella and there was only one toilet on the bus? Well, buddy, it's going to happen again. It's kind of a story saying that. And, we allowed somebody in, but look, your money's safe with us, kid. Here's a fancy graph to convince you that it's all okay. Now, going back to bed, it'll be all right in the morning. Don't worry. But I get worried. And again, I'm not slamming LastPass. We've seen these stories about, every vaulting service and so on. And, I mean, they do seem to be as good as these things kind of get. But, I mean, think about it like this. I mean, if you don't use the MFA, it's optional, and your master password is Mr. Flappy, well, the whole rest of that fancy flow chart doesn't really apply, since the encrypted vault at the bottom of the well can't protect you from that. And that whole thing about using PBKDF2 SHA-256 to slow down brute force attack may not really apply if the attackers have the entire encrypted vault and they can just keep running it for 1,000 years. So, remember those old John the Ripper attacks where if you have the shadow in the password file, you can just crack the whole thing? Yeah, I mean, it was like old school stuff, but, I mean, worked. So the convenience of having everything in one place is great, but the fear of, the marketing materials saying how okay it all is, but oops, we made a mistake, worries me a bit. I mean, they told me that I was safe, and their flowchart says the encrypted vault is at the bottom of Gringotts Bank, and no one can ever get to it. But that still worries me. The more they tell me that, the more it worries me, which I guess means I'm paranoid. I mean, they are notifying me about this breach almost 3 months after the breach happened and saying, oh, it's all okay, don't worry, you'll be all right. Like that Riker strain of that sex virus, it's curable, baby. But, here, have another copy of the flowchart to take home with you. And they got your credit card information, but they didn't get your password. But God save us all from another difficult decision from the Pentagon. So I guess my point is that old convenience thing is a problem. And when you mix it with the tired old password thing and make MFA optional, well, it starts to get a little bit scary. Your whole life is revolving around PIN numbers, passwords, fingerprints, and so on, your face, and all those things are terrifying to me. Your bank, your investment account, they're all tied up in that single password. So you must really, really, really love risk. You consolidated all your passwords in a vault, and it's protected by one password, and you didn't use MFA because it was optional. Here, let's take a ride in this slightly used Pinto with a full tank of gas. So I'm not going to stop using LastPass or whatever I use for password vaulting because I have thousands of passwords, and I never use the same one twice on any site. And no, they're not all in Klingon. Well, not anymore. Not anymore. But I am going to make sure that master password is going to be one hell of a brute force if you ever get it. And I'm going to turn on MFA. And I may just about, use the option to place my password vault in a pit full of crotolinia, which is Latin for go ahead, make my day, if you don't know what crotolinia are. And yes, that makes it really inconvenient when I have to go to the safe and drag out a tome that looks like maybe it was used for, to cast spells back in the Middle Ages, but it does have that mastered password list I will never, ever remember, and no, you can't get it. And maybe if I'd written it in Klingon, you'd never, ever figure it out, but it's not in Klingon or Gallifreyan, but it is in a place you're not going to get it. And since we're quoting William Burroughs today, old Bill did say once, a paranoid is someone who knows a little of what's going on. A psychotic is a guy who just found out what's going on. I miss William Burroughs and Hunter Thompson and R.I.P. Christine McVie. Sorry to see you go. And finally, must not talk about Ye. Nope. And I'm not going to, but I will talk about Elon, but not about Twitter. Elon has for a while been running this project called Neuralink, which is the most terrifying thing I've ever heard in my life. It's basically he wants to put an implant in your brain to allow your brain to interface with the computer. Now, hell yeah, I saw that. I was like, oh, that's so cool. But then I started thinking about it, and I started thinking about that difficult decision from the Pentagon that William Burroughs talked about. Well, Elon today said that, quote, most of the required paperwork with the FDA has been filed, and they want to start human trials in roughly 6 months. Ooh-wee. Oh, now that made me get the whole Twitter thing, though. People kept saying, why did Elon buy Twitter? I think he wants to identify people who are stupid enough to allow him to put a chip in their brain. I mean, really, would you allow Elon's company to put a chip in your brain? Or McDonald's? I think theirs is going to be called the McChip. Disney? Would you let Disney put a chip in your head? I mean, I don't know what the most beloved company in the world, but it might be Pepperidge Farms, right? I mean, let Pepperidge Farms remember for you. The Pepperidge Farms chip implant. Oh, God. I mean, I would love to directly interface with a computer. I think it would be so cool, a la Neuromancer. But can you imagine? I mean, Elon decides that he wants everyone to do the hokey pokey on Broadway, and we all just get up from our desk and we don't know why, and we start sauntering out the door and putting on grass skirts. Oh, wait, no. Then Elon changes his mind and says, do one where everyone has to talk backwards. I mean, did that guy just have a stroke? His eyes are looking weird. No time. You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. Think. I will wait for version 2 of that. And that's the news. Enjoy December. See you next week on the Security Weekly News.